Thanks for joining us on The World Today. This evening, I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up on the program. U.S. President Donald Trump urges Republican lawmakers to vote to release files relating to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Bangladesh's former prime minister is sentenced to death for crimes against humanity. Plus, 10 years since the Paris Climate Agreement, making COP30 in 2025. U.S. President Donald Trump has called on Republican lawmakers to vote to release files relating to Jeffrey Epstein. The U.S. president on Sunday night said Republicans in the House of Representatives should do so because, in his words, we have nothing to hide. The reversal of his recent position follows a slow drip feed of documents concerning the disgraced financier by House Democrats, some of which reference Trump, who has always denied any link to Epstein's sex abuse and trafficking. But details of his and other prominent figures' past relationship with Epstein have fueled speculation and led to a public spat with one of Trump's staunchest supporters, Mallory Taylor Greene. So American rapper Onika Minaj-Petty, also known as Nicki Minaj, will be speaking at a United Nations event in New York, where she's expected to address reported jihadist attacks on Christians in Nigeria. Ms. Minaj will appear alongside United States Ambassador to the UN, Michael Waltz, and Alex Brozovitz, an advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump and the convener of the event. Confirming this report, which was first revealed on Sunday by Time magazine's senior political correspondent Eric Cortisella via his X handle, Ambassador Michael Waltz praised the artist, describing her as not only arguably the greatest female recording artist, but also a principled individual who refuses to remain silent in the face of injustice. Let's talk to our correspondent in Washington now, Maria Bird. She joins us live. Maria, why is Nicki Minaj interested in the insecurity in Nigeria? Because as far as we know, Nicki Minaj is not Nigerian, has not traced her DNA to this part of the world.
Yes, you are correct. This is a very interesting piece. I think many Americans were also a bit surprised, but also knowing how heavy of a important role Nigerians play within the entertainment industry and some of her own personal ties to many Nigerian entertainers. And this obviously has struck a chord with many in the United States as it relates to what is being considered by the president an area of concern and the killing of what he has called Christians killings across Nigeria. And so I think this is, her way of being able to express kind of where the sentiments are with many entertainers in the community.
Now, is it possible that she is being used by some group to execute some kind of agenda with Nigeria? I mean, this does seem like a far reach, but is it possible, Maria?
Well, I think that that as you mentioned, it could be a bit of a far reach, but I think that we will see tomorrow once the address occurs. We also know that on November the 20th, the Foreign Affairs Committee will also be addressing what the president has called an area of concern. And so I think only time, honestly, will tell what this will end up being after tomorrow and into the 20th. And so for this to be happening tomorrow, which is the 18th, and then just 2 days later, we will be seeing Congress covering this. This just does show that this is something that I think many Americans will be continuing to watch. And as you mentioned, her going before the UN is definitely outside of what I think many would have considered to have been her stance in this area.
It does take it global, doesn't it? She's not speaking to U.S. congressmen, she's speaking to the UN. How are Americans reacting to this news, and what do they think is going on in Nigeria?
Well, I think Americans are very clear that some of the concerns are not just Christians, they're also Muslim killings as well. And so I think that Americans have been, as we've seen in the past with Boko Haram, many congressional members, especially very early on with the Shibok girls, were very clear to have a stay and a stance in that. But really, it was around terrorism in the region. That was the main concern of many congressional members. And I think it still continues to be the concern. But obviously, we know that the president has been very clear about his stance. This has now moved to Congress. There are bills that are being presented before Congress as it relates to the designation of Nigeria as an area of concern. And so we also know that the president does have a clear eye on building relationships in the continent. And so as we look at Nigeria being the one of the most powerful countries in the continent, obviously from a wealth perspective, one of the most integral parts and critical roles as it relates to business relationships. And so it'll be interesting to see how this further continues to play out as we move forward. As we also know that the president will highly likely also have a visit, whether or not the president does come to the U.S. We know that former President Buhari did come during the former Trump administration. So I think this is all panning out before our eyes, but I think there's obviously, as you've mentioned, there's a much larger picture to this as a whole.
Maria, thanks again for bringing us up to speed on this. We'll be sure to watch out for Nicki Minaj's address to the UN. And over now to Bangladesh, where former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been found guilty of allowing lethal force to be used against protesters and sentenced to death for what the court says is crimes against humanity. 1,400 people died in what was called the July Revolution last year, also called the Gen Z Revolution. It began as a quota reform movement in quota rule of getting government jobs in early June, led by students against discrimination in chances of getting jobs. The movement escalated into a full-fledged mass uprising after the government carried out mass killings of protesters. Amnesty International blamed Hasina's government's heavy-handed response for causing the death of students, journalists and bystanders, and demanded that the Hasina-led government of Bangladesh urgently end this repression. Reacting to the verdicts in a 5-page statement today, Hasina said the death penalty was the interim government's way of nullifying her party, the Awami League, as a political force, and that she was proud of her government's record on human rights. Result from the presidential election in Chile on Sunday have been announced by the country's electoral service. It says that Unidad por Chile candidate Ginette Giara received 26.63% of the valid votes, edging out Republican Party leader Jose Antonio Cast, who garnered 24.25%. Only 62.76% of votes have been counted so far. Among the most notable points of Ginette Giara's government's plan are economic growth and job creation, a historic reform to increase pensions, with estimated rises between 14 and 35%, and prioritizing the education and health systems. Yara stated that her main objective would be to lead through dialogue and collaboration with all sectors, always maintaining respect for democratic institutions. And a large-scale campaign under the slogan, "We will rebuild Gaza," has been launched in Gaza City with the participation of local organizations and United Nations agencies in an effort aimed at starting cleaning operations and removing debris left by the war. Dozens of participants, including UN officials, volunteers and residents who recently returned from the south of the Strip, took part in the activities in the city center. One participant, a woman in a wheelchair, held up a sign reading, "We will rebuild Gaza," just to express her support for the campaign. Director of the Palestinian NGO network, Amjad al-Shawar, said the initiative represents a shared message to the world that the people of Gaza are capable of bringing life back to their city. The campaign includes the deployment of machinery and trucks to clear debris from the streets, while dozens of workers and volunteers take part in removing waste and cleaning public areas, part of a broader effort to restore life to the city after many months of war.
We are in Gaza City today. We are here with the local authorities, with the Palestinian Association for the National CSOs and the Chamber of Commerce. We are here to start cleaning. And as you see behind me, we are engaging the communities, the people from Gaza City, those who have remained here during the war and those who are coming back from the south to live in their city. And we're cleaning. We are providing dignity again to the people to stay and continue living in their city. As UNDP, we have an important program, daily collection of solid waste, and now the preparation ahead of the winter to ensure that water, wastewater, is properly managed ahead of the winter season.
COP30 is the UN Climate Change Conference taking place from November 10th to the 21st in Belém, Brazil. It is significant because it marks the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. The agreement is a landmark international treaty on climate change adopted in 2015 with the goal of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. COP30 in 2025 is a significant milestone, marking a decade since the agreement was established. Our correspondent Ayola Kasim, who's in Belém, Brazil, reports.
Before Paris, 186 countries submitted carbon reduction targets known as Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, or INDCs, which outlined how each country will cut its carbon emissions. The goal is to limit global warming to between 2 degrees Celsius and 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels.
Est positive, je n'entends pas d'objection. L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
Once those countries joined the Paris Agreement, those INDCs became Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDCs. There is no one-size-fits-all approach for the NDCs, and different countries are taking climate action in different ways, from investing in renewable energy to introducing carbon taxes. The NDCs are to be updated every 5 years by parties to the agreement, and each new iteration is expected to be more ambitious than the previous one. Nigeria's third NDC, or NDC 3.0, is economy-wide, covering all greenhouse gases in Nigeria's inventory, and sets an ambitious target of a 32% reduction in emissions by 2035 compared to 2018 levels. This latest National Climate Action Plan aims to increase the share of renewable energy in electricity generation from 22 to 52%. The Paris Agreement adheres to the principle called common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Mouthful, yes. It means that while there is a duty on all countries to take climate action, the types of action they take will depend on their different national circumstances. The flexibility in the agreement has meant that so far, some countries have pledged to cut their net climate emissions to zero by 2050, while other countries have set other goals. Nigeria commits to achieving net zero emissions by 2060. President Trump pulled out the United States during his first term. President Biden rejoined in 2021, and now President Trump is working on pulling out again. Should the United States pull out this time, it will rejoin Iran, Libya, and Yemen as the only countries outside the Paris Agreement. The operational details for the practical implementation of the Paris Agreement were agreed on at the UN Climate Change Conference, known as COP24, in Katowice, Poland, in December 2018, in what is called the Paris Route Bowl, and finalized at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, in November 2021. Now, in 2023, the first global stocktake of the world's efforts under the Paris Agreement concluded at COP28. The agreement also reaffirms that developed countries should take the lead in providing financial assistance to developing countries. The latest climate finance target, called the New Collective Quantified Goal, or NCQG, to mobilize at least $300 billion annually for developing countries by 2035, replaced the previous $100 billion goal. The developing countries still want the NCQG to grow to $1.3 trillion. In 2022, a new loss and damage fund, which is to help vulnerable countries and communities, was established. It was operationalized in 2023, and this year at COP30 in Berlin, the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage launched the call for funding requests. Despite being a cause for celebration, the stark reality is the fund must be filled with at least $400 billion a year. Sadly, it currently has just $250 million. From the Hangar Convention and Fair Center of the Amazon in Berlin, Brazil, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
Thanks, Ayola. Coming back to Africa now. In the South, the Nigerian South Africa Chamber of Commerce has marked its 20th anniversary with a special cocktail forum in Johannesburg. The event brought together key partners and industry leaders, including representatives from Standard Bank and other banks, as well as the Nigerian High Commission in South Africa. Our correspondent, Innocent Amosa, has more.
It's been 2 decades now. The Chamber says it has played a pivotal role in strengthening trade, investment, and bilateral business relations between the two nations.
We bring together government on both sides, but we also bring together very key private sector players who can talk in an environment that is provided for them to be enabling, but they have access to the entire network and ecosystem.
At the sidelines of the event, I caught up with the Chamber's leadership to reflect on its journey and the road ahead.
I think our biggest achievement actually over the years has been creating a safe space for competitors, for Africans from other countries, for Nigerians to come and be in a space where professionalism and information, insights, all of those things are really well appreciated. And we've created a big network of people, both South Africans, Nigerians and others over the years who have really supported us and come to events, got to know each other.
As it celebrates 20 years, the focus now shifts to building new pathways for growth and deeper collaboration. The question is, which sectors should the Chamber focus on next for growth?
So going forward, I think, the whole world is moving in a certain direction. So there's 3 key areas that we have to now follow as well. Trade is obviously a big one. We're a business chamber representing 2 big countries, and so trade is critical, and that's what a lot of our members are doing. But also the digital space and energy. Those are 2 other big sectors that are emerging.
We have a presence in Nigeria, in the financial services sector, and we have about $2 billion invested in Nigeria. I think some of the key sectors that we should be focusing on for both Nigeria and South Africa, number 1 is obviously the major technological innovation and digitization of our businesses, not only in the financial services sector, but if you look at all areas of healthcare.
If we look at what Africa as a whole has to offer the world, South Africa and Nigeria are 2 of the big economies on the continent. And what we have to offer is very much in terms of food security, so I would say agriculture.
As the Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce marks this milestone, the message from stakeholders is clear: stronger partnerships, deeper economic ties, and greater opportunities lies ahead for businesses across both countries. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
The art of wine tasting is becoming an acquired taste in Lagos, Nigeria, and according to wine export consultant Chinedu Rosa, the taste for wine is changing in Nigeria. Having toured the world in her over 25 years of experience, she's back to the country to make sure Nigerians experience good wines, especially as the festive season approaches.
So with my partners, you will actually travel to...
There is no exact number of wine experts in the world, nor in Nigeria. But for the lady whose sojourn with wines began with a keen interest as a teenager, this was not a trajectory her life was expected to take.
I don't, there are times in your life something just clicks. And with me, wine clicked. Wine clicked. My husband was a wine importer. God rest his soul, he is late now. But I started drinking wine quite when I was 16, 17, because I have an uncle who is a bishop, an archbishop actually, and he was based in Rome. So within that lifespan, he would bring some really good wines. And I've never been a beer drinker. I never liked beer. I don't think I even drank alcohol growing up till I started drinking wine. And it was a love at first sight for me with wine. I've always loved wine, but the problem, as usual, Nigeria is not a wine drinking culture. So if I do not travel those days, I couldn't drink the wines I wanted till my uncle came back. And then I'm like, oh, did uncle bring some wine? And then, you know, you can try some nice wines. But then growing up, things were changing in Nigeria. And then my late husband went into importing wine. And teaching, I was to myself, yeah, good wine. But it wasn't it wasn't the case. They were bringing wine based on price.
For over 20 years, Chinedu has found partners who share the same passion and have held wine tasting classes, master classes, and exported good wine from all over Europe to clients around the world.
What I found out in my years in the wine industry is that Nigerians have really elegant taste. They start with sweet wines, not complicated, but the more they drink, the more they explore. And like one of my partners said, we are very adventurous people. Give me, let me try. Give me, let me try. And that was what my wine store was doing. At the EXO wine store, we opened the first wine store where you could come taste wine, where you could come discuss about wine, eat with wine. It was the first place where we did wine tasting of champagne and akara, which is one of the biggest hits in the wine industry when it comes to Africa. Oh, it's amazing. The acidity and the sweetness of the champagne with the akara. Akara also have a bit of acidity with salt and the spice. I will have to do that with you one day, you see. It is amazing.
She brings her expertise to Nigeria from time to time, and friends and clients have come to expect the best from her. So how about a little masterclass on wines, wine tasting, and how to hold a glass of wine?
I don't want you drinking and falling on the ground. It defeats the whole idea of wine drinking because it's a lifestyle. And having a lifestyle really teaches people how to temper their alcohol intake. Because you want to sit and have your glass of wine, roll it, talk to your friend, say cheers, girl, and not down it. You sip. You don't gurgle, you don't, you know, it's not spirit. Or drink from a bottle, oh my God. You know, you don't do that. And you would see it elevates people's style. You see people sitting straight when they drink wine, making eye contact and actually having a discussion. That was how wine became something the Europeans, it's second nature to them. You sit down, you have a conversation with a glass of wine in your hand. A lot of time in Nigeria, you see people hold their glasses like this. And honestly, I'm not trying to be dismissive of that, but the fact is, the wine is a living thing. Every temperature affects it. So the stem is here for a reason. They want you, or the best way to enjoy your wine is to have your glass in your hand, below the stem, or this way. Just don't touch the tulip side or where the wine is. And don't forget, fingerprints. Doesn't look, it makes glass look dirty later, you know? So when you hold it like this, you have a good grip, and you can swirl, and you can enjoy the bouquet of your wine.
She looks forward to spending Christmas for the first time in the country after many years in France, where she lives with her family and has her business.
You put your glass against each other and try to look at somebody in the eyes. Very, very important.
She hopes to spend many more special moments sharing her love for good wine and the good life. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News. And cheers to the good life. That's it on The World Today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.